I had lunch with a friend today. Not a close friend, the kind of friend you maintain because dropping them would require an explanation, and the explanation would be more effort than the lunch. We went to a restaurant she suggested. Too expensive for either of us, but she'd been there with someone else last week and mentioned it, and I said, "That sounds lovely," because that's what you say. And then we were committed. She ordered the fish. I ordered the fish. Not because I wanted fish, I wanted the pie, but because the pie was 4 shillings cheaper and I didn't want her to think I was watching the price. She probably wanted the pie too. I'll never know. We sat across from each other for an hour, performing the version of ourselves that the other one expected, and when the bill came, we split it evenly, which meant I paid 2 shillings more than my share for a fish I didn't want. On the way home, I passed a street of terraced houses, identical fronts, identical doors, each one with curtains slightly different from the neighbours. And I thought about how much of what we own exists not because we want it, but because someone next to us has something, and the gap between having and not having feels like a statement we didn't agree to make. I've got a story about 2 families who understood that perfectly, and a housekeeper who watched the whole thing from the only honest room in either house.
Clara, you look like you've been doing maths in your head.
I've been doing maths in a restaurant. Worse.
Social arithmetic, the most expensive kind.
Tonight's about 2 families, 2 houses, and a woman who cleaned both of them.
A housekeeper?
The only person in this story who could afford to be honest, because nobody thought she was watching. There were 2 families on Cathcart Lane in Kensington. The Prices at number 12 and the Ashtons at number 14. Semi-detached, which is the architectural equivalent of being stuck in a conversation you can't leave. Shared wall, shared street, shared postman. The Prices were comfortable. Mr. Price managed accounts for a shipping firm. The Ashtons were comfortable. Mr. Ashton held a junior partnership at an insurance brokerage. Both families had 2 children, a front garden, and a dining set they were quietly proud of. They were, by every measure, the same. And that was the problem. Because when 2 families are the same, every difference becomes a message. A new coat isn't a coat, it's a sentence. And the other family has to decide whether to reply.
Arms race. Domestic theatre.
Exactly. But no one fires the first shot on purpose. That's what makes it interesting. It starts with something so small that calling it a competition would sound absurd, which is why no one calls it that. They just do it.
So, what started it?
Curtains. Quite ordinary, ain't it? Mrs. Price bought new curtains in March. Cream linen, tasteful, nothing extravagant. She hung them on a Saturday. By Monday, Mrs. Ashton had noticed. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She went to the same draper the following week and bought curtains in a slightly heavier fabric. Slightly better. Not dramatically. Just enough that a person standing on the street would see both windows and register, without quite knowing why, that number 14 had the edge. Mrs. Price noticed. Of course she noticed. She noticed the way you notice a paper cut. Small, sharp, surprisingly persistent. She didn't buy new curtains. She bought a window box, flowers, something the curtains could frame. Number 12 now had depth. Number 14 had fabric. The score was level. The game, which neither woman would ever admit was a game, had begun.
Over curtains? Really?
It's never about the curtains, dear. The curtains are just the language. What they're actually saying is, I see you. I see what you have. And I need you to know that I have it too. It's not greed. It's not vanity. It's the terror of being seen as less by the person standing closest to you.
Well, proximity is the cruelest mirror.
Yes, and they lived on either side of a shared wall. By summer, the curtains were forgotten. The competition had moved to dinner parties. The Prices hosted in June. 4 courses, good wine, the Wedgwood plates. The Ashtons were invited. They attended, complimented everything, went home and hosted their own dinner in July. 5 courses, better wine, flowers on the table. The Prices attended, complimented everything and began planning August. It went on like this through autumn. Each dinner slightly more elaborate, each evening slightly more expensive. Each compliment delivered with the precision of a chess move, warm enough to sound genuine, specific enough to acknowledge the effort, never so generous as to concede defeat. By Christmas, both families had spent more on entertaining each other than either could comfortably afford. The Prices delayed paying their coal bill. The Ashtons let the insurance lapse on Mrs. Ashton's jewellery, the jewellery she wore to the Prices' dinners. Neither family said a word, because saying a word would mean admitting the game existed, and admitting the game existed would mean admitting they were losing it.
Mutually assured domesticity.
Precisely. And here's where Mrs. Daly comes in.
The housekeeper?
Yes, Margaret Daly. Cleaned for the Prices on Mondays and Wednesdays. Cleaned for the Ashtons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Same street, same houses. 2 sets of keys. And a front row seat to the most polite war in Kensington. Mrs. Daly was not a complicated woman, by her own description. She cleaned, she observed. She kept her mouth shut because keeping your mouth shut is the first and last skill of domestic service. But she saw everything. She saw Mrs. Price's household ledger open on the kitchen table, the numbers getting tighter each month, the handwriting getting smaller, as though writing the figures in a smaller hand might make them weigh less. She saw the Ashtons' pantry growing thinner between dinners, full shelves when guests were expected, bare shelves the week after. She saw Mr. Price's shoes, resoled twice, polished to a military shine every morning. She saw Mr. Ashton's coat, brushed so carefully the bare patches at the elbows almost disappeared. Both men went to the same firm, different departments, same building. Mrs. Daly knew this because she found their train tickets in their coat pockets when she hung them. Same station, same time, same platform. 2 men standing yards apart every morning, each pretending the other wasn't there, each wearing a coat they couldn't afford to replace, each going home to a dinner party they couldn't afford to host.
Did they know about each other's money problems?
They worked at the same firm. Mr. Price handled accounts. Mr. Ashton handled insurance assessments. They saw each other's financial positions professionally. They knew.
They both knew the other was drowning, and neither one put down the weight.
Because putting down the weight means the other person sees you put it down. And being seen putting it down is worse than drowning. Well, it went on for 3 years. 3 years of curtains and dinners and coats and shoes, and 2 families slowly hollowing themselves out to maintain the shape of something nobody had asked them to be. Mrs. Daly watched it all. She told her sister once. Her sister told a neighbour. The neighbour told a woman at my firm decades later, which is how the truest stories travel. She said she kept waiting for one of them to stop. Just one. One morning, one wife saying to the other over the fence, "I can't afford the dinner this month." 7 words. That's all it would have taken. 7 words and the whole machinery stops. But the 7 words never came, because saying them would mean being seen, and being seen would mean being less, and being less to these 2 families, standing on either side of a shared wall, looking at each other's curtains every morning, being less was the one thing they'd built their entire lives to prevent. Mrs. Daly left both positions in 1909. She told Mrs. Price she was moving to her daughter's in Kent. She told Mrs. Ashton the same thing. On her last Thursday, she cleaned number 14 in the morning and number 12 in the afternoon. She left both houses spotless. She said later that it was like cleaning a theatre after the audience has gone. Everything in its place, perfectly arranged, and no one honest left in the room.
3 years, and not one honest sentence between them.
Not one. And the worst part isn't the waste, though the waste is staggering. The worst part is that they liked each other. Mrs. Daly said that. They genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The Thursday teas, before the competition started, were real. The friendship was real. The curtains killed it. Not because curtains matter, but because the moment you start answering someone instead of talking to them, the conversation is over. You're just exchanging positions.
I see this in my work. Families who won't apply for assistance because the family next door hasn't applied. The shame of needing help is bad enough. The shame of needing help visibly, where your neighbour can see, that's the one that keeps people hungry.
Mrs. Daly saw 2 families destroy themselves over the terror of being seen as less than the person standing next to them. Not less than the world, less than one person. The audience was always one family. The performance was always for one pair of eyes. And I think about that, about how much of what I do, what I buy, what I wear, how I speak in meetings, exists not because I want it, but because someone next to me has it, and the absence feels like a confession. So, how much of your life is a response to what you think someone else is performing? And what if they're only performing because of you?
Then you're both standing in front of a mirror, copying the reflection, and neither of you is moving first.
Someone has to put the weight down.
Someone always has to. No one ever does.